And now it's time for another interview on the Babylon Bee podcast.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This is the interview show on the Babylon Bee podcast. We're really blessed to have Landon Starbuck with us today. This is going to be so much fun. You are a mom, a former Hollywood star turned advocate, wants to empower parents to fight back and protect children from abuse, trafficking, and exploitation in all forms, even gender-affirming care. So we're really, really happy to have you on, Landon. Thank you so much for joining us today. With me today is also Dan Coates, and he's also the producer of our podcast. So it's kind of a big deal to talk to Dan Coates.
That's what I do.
Yeah, he's kind of a big deal.
Well, thanks for having me. Thank you, Jarrett, and thank you, Dan. I'm a big fan of the Babylon Bee and so happy to be here.
All right. So your last name is Starbuck. Were you on Battlestar Galactica?
No. So my husband, Robbie Starbuck, that's how that happened, is I married him.
Oh, okay.
And thus my last name became Starbuck.
Is that a real last name or did he make that up?
So, okay, you want to know the real story here?
Yes, I do.
He's been using his last name, his real last name is Starbuck. His sisters and him all were given these very interesting names, middle names. So there was like Starshine, Sunlight, there was all these kind of hippie type names. And so it was Robbie Starbuck, and he has always gone by that. He's never gone by the family last name. So that's what everybody's always known him as since he was 15 years old. So yeah, that's his real name, and that's our name.
So you're the founder of the nonprofit Freedom Forever. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What's that going on? What's going on there?
Sure. Yeah. So we combat child exploitation in all forms, whether that be trafficking or medical exploitation. And what we're seeing with this, gender confusion, the institutional, medical exploitation of children is happening with the chemical castrations and the surgeries and all of that. So we are very involved in combating that. A myriad of ways, but we also address, trafficking through our border, all of the issues that some of the larger, more well-funded, more well-known organizations that claim to be helping children will not address or talk about. And so that's really why I started this nonprofit, is to cover those gaps, because we're fearless about what the truth is and what the needs are and what we have to do to combat it effectively. Because unfortunately, as much as we all want to rescue children, that doesn't solve the problem. There's still this grooming that's happening, this never-ending demand and supply of children. And so until we address those issues, we're not going to see this problem reduced in America.
Wow. That seems like a really big task that you've taken on. It seems like you would need really strong and powerful partners to do that with. Do you have those? Like, who do you partner with to do this?
Yeah, so we partner with a lot of different people. So when we organized the March to the Border 2 years ago, we partnered with Turning Point. I mean, it was the largest coalition response to the border crisis that anyone has done up to date. And so we find ways to partner with other value-based organizations fighting with the same strategies. So, part one is admitting the problem. If you can't recognize there's a border crisis, that trafficking children is wrong, then we're probably not going to align with these other organizations. And sadly, many of them are enabling. So we try to find like-minded individuals and organizations to partner with so we can amplify our messaging. Now, our nonprofit is volunteer run. I don't take a salary and nobody else does. So it's me and other incredible humans lending their expertise and skill set, whatever that may be. So we come together and we find ways. So we have like a Project Veritas style investigative journalism arm that we've exposed the transgender pediatric clinic in Nashville. And now we have legislation that is banning child mutilation in our state. So we do a lot of really amazing things just because average people that care about this issue come to the table and we find out how we can work together.
That's how you got on my radar. Was I saw your speech at the rally to end child mutilation. That in Tennessee, you were promoting that bill that finally got passed through the House there. Has that been signed into law yet, or are you guys still waiting to see what's going to happen?
Well, it passed the House and Senate. We're just waiting for our governor to sign it. We believe he will. We've been told he will. So we're just waiting for that to happen, but we anticipate it will.
It seems like we're living in two realities, that they're like half of America is looking at this as a problem of gender affirming care for children and transgender surgery for kids of all ages. Half of America looks at that and goes, Oh yeah, we're just affirming what they identify as, or we're helping them by giving them these treatments, and the other half of America is just horrified at it. How do you bridge that gap? Because that it's just two different realities. It's two different worlds almost.
Well, I mean, look at what's happened to academia. I mean, this is how we've been primed to accept these theories, which are, I mean, crackpot theories, completely not even backed by fake science. I mean, they don't even have the fake science to substantiate their crackpot theories. So what is being done to children is medical experimentation and exploitation. We're talking about drugs that are being used off-label with no long-term safety studies whatsoever. And the lie that they use, the emotional manipulation of, would you rather have a dead son or a live daughter, is just a manipulation. Their statistics don't back it up. It's used with a technique called convenient sampling. So they're sampling a small population so they get the results that they want, so they can perpetuate these lies and narratives that then trickle down to the classroom. And then parents just believe this system, because this is the education system. They sell these ideas under inclusivity and education. And that is why we're here. The education system, I think, is even more, of a problem as far as how this got to this point. The medical, system was just there to capitalize on it. But the priming, the grooming has been happening in our education spaces. And that's why we have an entire classroom. I think it was in this Chicago that was or it was Missouri. I think it was related to a bill that Holly was working on. An entire classroom wanted to transition. I mean, where are all the dead bodies if this is a natural occurrence? Man, where are all these dead bodies of children before? There wasn't even a Google search for this 12 years ago.
Now, who is, obviously somebody is benefiting from this. Something like this, a moving culture where they're exploiting kids, like who's benefiting? Like at the end of the day, who do you think is behind all this? Is it Klaus Schwab?
I think there's a lot of nefarious interests that benefit, because who benefits from a demoralized, destabilized society where children don't even, their identities are dismantled and they're disconnected from their families. I mean, communists benefit, globalists benefit, activist teachers, ideologues, they all benefit because it's all the same thing. It's authoritarianism, and whatever, they individually benefit, but whether it's their ideological, push for progressivism, at this point, to me, it doesn't even matter. It just matters that we stop the hemorrhaging. So that's what I try to focus on, is like, how do we get people, average people, that say, I care about this issue, I want to protect kids, to understand that when they send their children back into these environments 8 hours a day, it doesn't matter what you teach at home. You're teaching your kid to be part of a lie and narrative that undermines everything that we stand for.
Wow. So get the kids out of the public schools is what you would say.
If you're in areas where you can't fight it, I think these battles are worth fighting where we can make a difference. But I think we have to be real that some areas are just completely dominated by these corrupt people. And until we take those areas back, we're not going to see that trickle down and have an effect in the classroom. So basically, what I say is, where there's grooming, exploitation is not far behind. So whether they're grooming sexually with the pornographic, sexually explicit books in the schools, or whether they're, doing the grooming, the gender grooming, and keeping secrets from parents, when that's happening, we pull our kids out. We cannot negotiate with these people for our own children's safety. And so that's, I think, the big turning point we're waiting for, a parenting revolution where parents really wake up and realize that our kids are not worth that price to pay to fight a system that is hell-bent and well-funded on turning, and this, because this is not going to end here. This is part of a transhumanistic movement where now the education system, the future of it, and the dollars have already been invested, are going to basically put our kids dependent on AI and on these systems for education, where they're digitally nudged, where their behavior is digitally nudged. So looking at the future, we can play whack-a-mole and say, oh, we got this pornographic book out, or we stopped the gender, ideology, or we got rid of critical race theory. But these people are never going to stop as long as they control the institutions. So where we can fight to control at the top level, great. But until that happens, children are suffering. And I don't think the price is worth it for families to lose their children. And families are being destroyed by this ideology.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting because we're in the homeschool movement. My wife and I are in the homeschool movement. She runs a big homeschool program that has like 1,200 students in it. And we love this idea of pulling people out of the public school system. We're obviously in California, and the indoctrination is definitely happening here. But most people, even when you talk to them, like if I were to sit down with a Christian couple, like from my church, and I were to say, "Look, this is what's going on," a lot of people still don't believe me, and it's just a crazy. To me, convincing people that this is going on is part of the goal. And it's a difficult thing to do sometimes, but I think we need to get in there and do it. And then there's sometimes where it's really subversive, where you can't tell, like, this is obviously what's happening. They're being indoctrinated. Obviously, they're trying to shove this LGBTQAI stuff down people's throats. What do you do with that? Like the kind of soft or the middle of the road, because I think it's happening everywhere. But like, what do you do, and how do you educate people and tell them, how to do this? Where do they go?
Well, that's a big piece of it. Freedomforever.us is our nonprofit website, but also, following me, Landon Starbuck, on Instagram, every single day, I'm exposing, the craziness that's happening. It's undeniable. The evidence is here. We have an abundance of it. And so we're not responsible for what other people do, and I think that we can lead them to the truth and lovingly present it to them. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, there's still this resistance. And I think that we have to bear responsibility for our choices, because I think a lot of, especially people in the conservative movement, they don't really realize their power and the choices that they do have. And so they won't even make a plan. And that's what I tell people is like, I understand there's these scenarios where there's, maybe a divorced couple and the dad wants to keep them in the public school and the mom wants to take them out, but she can't because she's working 2 jobs. I understand that. But there can be a plan, right? Where they're look into the co-ops, look into the other options to fight for our kids. Until we adopt this warrior mindset, we will not be able to do what needs to be done to protect this next generation of children. And it goes to, many facets. I mean, the phone, the technology is a huge piece that is grooming our children. Yeah. And we're now seeing the results of that. It's so devastating and sad. But waking up an entire generation of parents to realize, like, our children are not worth this experiment.
Yeah,
not medically, totally. Not ideologically, and with AI, what they're doing.
We're always talking about that, like with our group. We're always talking about the danger of the cell phone, connecting your kids to the internet. Here's a porn machine, you know what I mean? Like, here, you're giving these kids this access to unfettered information. It's insane. So what motivates you though, Landon? Like what is it? Why are you so passionate about this personally?
Well, I think that, I've been in this space for a while and I came into it very naive. So I left Hollywood as a Billboard charting singer-songwriter. I was knee deep in the industry and I wanted out. I was depressed. I didn't want to participate in the sexual quid pro quo system that exists. But I ended up leaving thinking that it was just Hollywood where child trafficking and exploitation existed. And the more that I learned and the more that I served in different capacities, and whether it's boards of different organizations and helping trafficking and just working in all these different spaces. And I think that, that was my training, was just seeing this from so many different angles. I was then able to take a bird's eye view of this entire problem and realize that it's the demand that is driving this. And what drives the demand? It's the behaviors. And examining our behaviors, educating on them, and teaching parents in particular how to take our power back and how to replace these negative behaviors with behaviors that are going to produce more positive outcomes that also are in alignment with our values. Because what is the point of being a Christian or saying you have conservative values if our actions are diametrically opposed to every single one of them?
Amen.
So I had a question for you, Landon. Obviously, we all would agree here, like, get the phones away from your kids. If you can, if you're able, get your kids out of the indoctrination that they're in. Get them away from all that. But what would you say to a teenager who is going through this now? They've already had the phone. They've already had the teacher groom them. They're struggling with all these, what's my identity? Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. What would you say to those kids that are going through this right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I speak to a lot of them, and it's so devastating how broken they are as a result of this. But I try to speak love and life into them by reminding them that their identity is not in any superficial characteristic, whether it be their skin color or oppression group or any of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as your identity is in those things, you will not have purpose, you will not have meaning, you will not even be able to cultivate a sense of joy because you're so oppressed by that particular ideology. So I try to educate on like what that ideology is and what are the outcomes. Objective reality exists.
Mm-hmm.
And if the outcome of that objective reality is that you mutilate yourself or feel like you constantly have to be in this victim mindset, what is the outcome of that? Is you're going to be miserable. And so I try to empower them with control over those choices, because we do choose our outcomes. We do choose what we want to participate in. And so if we can educate on what behaviors, what thought processes, and what those outcomes are, it puts people in a position of power to then say, wait a minute, I do have control over this. If I know that I spend inordinate amounts of time online, viewing the content on Instagram, and I look at these statistics that show these poor outcomes, and I feel depressed and all that, I'm going to continue feeling that and go on a downward spiral. But if I invest in myself and true identity, how I want to grow spiritually, how I want to grow as a person, how I want to be of service outside of myself and not in this selfish, love thyself movement of self-worship, there is meaning there. There's purpose, but the best way is just to live that. And I'm not perfect, but I try to live that and show that to people. And I have not had an easy life. I had ovarian cancer. I had my entire teenagehood stolen at 16 years old. So it's not been an easy, I'm coming from a place of, I know pain, I know depression, I know what it's like to crawl my way out of these things. And I also know the power of God in all of this. And to not tell people that truth is a disservice. It's the most unloving, uncompassionate thing we could do, is to let them know that is, not speak that truth of what is available to them if they want it.
Mm. Gosh, that's really good.
Yeah.
You sound like a Christian.
Well, good. That'd be a good thing.
I like that. I like that about you.
So we recently came across an article that you had written about this group of trans moms, I guess is what they're calling themselves. This Serendipity Doodah, I guess is the name of the group. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what is that and what's going on?
So that is the largest group of trans moms of so-called trans children that exists. So it's about 36,000 members. And these moms all have these behavioral commonalities where they're looking, it's almost a pseudo religion where they're looking for a sense of purpose and belonging and affirming one another and their children. And this was a probably 4-month investigative, journey that I went on with some other moms that actually, were the whistleblowers. They came forward and said, hey, we were kicked out of this group because of, our political beliefs, or because our kid was gay and they had a trans agenda. So it's almost like in some situations, they're transing the gay away. These children don't even have developed identities, and these moms are trying to trans their children as young as 2 because their child wears an Elsa dress or likes the color pink or purple. And they're fast tracking them to the social transitioning. They're comparing notes on how to get insurance to cover hormones and even the surgeries. And that is really the culmination of all that, is that they post pictures of their children on surgery day. And these are kids as young as 12, we know, are getting top surgery in America. Girls are. And it's when you see this and you just kind of live in this for a little bit, that's what really gave me the idea of like, does this fit the description of Munchausen by proxy? Is this a modern form of that? Mm-hmm. Because all of the markers seem to be consistent with that. And I know that some of these moms are just lost and they're not, coming from a sinister place of, I want to destroy my child's life. But I think that that narcissism and that mental component is really driving this, because they're getting something for themselves out of it. They're getting that affirmation.
Wow. So that's terrible. What it sounds like these women are just collectively kind of, they have a psychosis that they're all sharing together. It's just awful. What is the best way that we can protect our kids? Like what you're passionate about. What's the best way that we can protect our kids?
The best way is an inside out approach. So when when I started, looking at my own life and taking inventory of my own life and looking at the mistakes that I've made as a parent, and what I've allowed in my home, instead of just blaming, Hollywood or outside forces, I looked at myself and said, well, I allowed Hollywood in my home. Hollywood didn't come in my home and bust down the door. I allowed it. I allowed Disney in my home. I allowed these things that were grooming my children into certain ideas. And coming from the industry, I don't even know, some people aren't aware, but I mean, they even have offices for Planned Parenthood in the industry because they want placements in their shows. They want ideological nudging to happen for our kids. So there's a reason where, even in this group that I'm just talking about, they put an ad out from Nickelodeon seeking young trans children to be actors in their shows. There's an agenda here. And so not only is it looking on the inward out from our homes to the devices, to what our kids have access to what they spend their time doing, but where they're being educated. Who are the influential adults in their life? Do we know who their teachers are, what they believe, and what they think their roles are? What about our doctors? Do they think that they're entitled to a private one-on-one with our child when we drop them off? Taking an entire inventory of everything that touches our child and examining if we want to co-sign on that. That is an incredibly powerful thing to do. It's a scary thing to do because when you realize how much power you have, we realize we have more power than not to stop the exploitation of all children, because it doesn't just end with our influence and our kids. It's the environments that we're subjecting them into with others as well. And so that is the biggest thing, because every single survivor I've ever spoken with who is a survivor of CSA, child sexual abuse, or child trafficking, I asked you, did you have a dad in the home? Most of them did not, or their dads were abusing them. I said, did you have an intact family? Was there a loving family? Did you have a hobby? No. None of these things that are pillars of what makes a family strong and united were there. And so if that's part of the problem, risk factors, then we need to make sure that that's the priority to counter that. So we're not just responding to all the negative stuff and crap like Disney, but we're replacing it with things that unite us as a family and bring us closer as a family. So those are things that we have the power to do individually. It's not just looking for the signs or the man in the van or looking for the children that are obviously displaying signs of being trafficked, bruises and malnutrition, all those things. I mean, yes, we want to help those people, but it's the responsibility of our own children, and it begins with us.
Yeah, it's the job of the parents.
Yeah,
job of the
step
parents.
one, be a parent.
Be a parent. And you know what? And don't give your kids over when they're in their teenage years either. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's one of the things that we've noticed too in our group is people just kind of want to give the education of their children and the raising of their children to other people when they reach a certain age. Like, oh, it's just their time to spread their wings. There was a book called Hold On to Your Kids that we read. It's a really powerful book. But it was just about the idea that the teenage years are actually the prime time to lean into your kids, to have that relationship, have a deep emotional connection with your kids, do things with your kids, make your family the prime thing, have strong family. And that does make healthy people. Like strong family makes healthy people. And so we need to make sure that we encourage people to do that. We're big fans of that. So I love
100%.
100%.
Sounds easier said than done, but when you break it down and you really look at all of those aspects, I think that it's hard to admit, a lot of our families are broken in that aspect, and that we have subcontracted out parenting to the school institution or to a doctor, whoever it is. And yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I'm not giving that youth pastor my kids. Right. I don't trust him as far as I could throw him. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. I love my youth pastor.
All right, Landon. Well, this has been great. We do ask every guest on the podcast the same 10 questions.
The 10 questions.
First question is, have you met Carmen?
No. Are
you a Calvinist or an Arminian?
A communist?
A Calvinist or an Arminian?
Oh, a Calvinist?
Yeah.
I'll pass on that one.
Yes. Okay. That's okay. It just means, do you believe in free will, or do you believe in predestination or fatalism?
I definitely believe in free will.
Okay.
I definitely believe.
We go.
Yes.
Okay.
Next question. You can add one book to the Bible. What is it?
Or it could be
Oh,
just
man.
a good book you want everyone to read. That could be,
Which
that
we
could
will
be
then
it.
add to the Bible.
Yeah, we will then. To our Bible's very large. We've had a lot of answers to this.
Oh, geez. I mean, anything Thomas Sowell.
Oh, wow. She's based.
Dang, dude.
Thomas Sowell.
Hardcore. That's hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I really enjoy books on brain science and trauma and things like that, and how we can rewire our brains. So I like Dr. Joe Dispenza a lot. Like Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself was a really great tool. Yeah, so that one was a very life-changing one for me. So I would add that, just the power that God gives us, like to use our minds to change our entire reality.
All right, next question. Cigars or pipes?
Neither.
Okay. That's what I figured.
Who do you hang out with? Any 3 people, living or dead, and you can't pick Jesus.
Okay. 3 people. Well, I have 3 kids and a husband, so that would be
You'd have to
difficult.
kick one of them out.
Choose,
Yeah.
Who's not making? Who gets kicked off
Who
the
are
island?
the 3 favorites?
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh man. Yeah, that would be. Gosh, that's a tough one. Yeah, it'd be my kids and my husband. I can't pick one.
Okay.
That's cool.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a good one. That's a good one. I like it when people say that. All right. So whiskey or beer?
I'm not really much of a drinker, but whiskey for sure.
All right.
I'm in Tennessee.
You are.
You got to pick whiskey if you're in Tennessee.
Bourbon. Yeah, like there you go. All right, cool.
What would be the first thing you do as president?
Oh man. Term limits, I guess, would be the first thing, maybe.
That's a good answer.
I don't know. I mean, how do you get rid of like all of the there's so many things. I could go on a laundry list. Definitely no big PACs, big corporation donors and lobbyists. I mean, there's so many things to completely deconstruct the way things are running, but I don't know if I'd be able to do that by executive order. So that's a tough one.
You could always try. All right.
I could try, yeah.
Have you ever punched anybody or been punched? And is there a story there?
Well, not to be Debbie Downer, but I was in an abusive relationship, so I definitely know what that is like. But I've never had to punch anybody. I've wanted to punch people. I was close to punching someone the other day when I was giving testimony that was screaming at me. So that was not fun. I'm glad that didn't happen that way. I ended up being escorted by the troopers out of the hearing room for my own safety. So that was probably a good thing that happened.
Wow. That sounds like a really intense story, actually. Oh my goodness.
Well, I mean, it was the rainbow tolerant loving crew. That's the reality of what happens.
The pink army.
Yes.
That's right.
So next question, one concert, any band in history, who do you go see?
Oh my gosh, I feel so boring. You guys are like making me, I'm like, all I do is work and hang out with my kids and feed my chickens.
Oh yeah, that's so boring.
Like what is music? Goodness.
Have you ever heard music before? We'll start there. We'll start there.
I'm a musician, so I like music. But I don't know who my favorite artist is.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like so lame saying that, but I don't have a favorite artist.
That's okay. I really don't have a favorite artist either. It really depends on the time of day. So.
Yeah,
Last question. And we ask this of everybody. We are a Christian website. Some people are surprised to hear that sometimes. But we ask, do you accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no life without Jesus.
We got it.
I wouldn't even be here without him, and I wouldn't want to live without him.
That's great. That's great. I knew you were a Christian.
Yep.
That's cool.
This podcast is just a long con to get to that question.
Oh my gosh.
Landon Starbuck, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for being on the podcast. If there's any way that we can help you, just reach out to us, okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys, being willing to talk about this stuff. I know it's not super lighthearted and fun, but definitely parents, want to get involved. They can go to our website, freedomforever.us, and volunteer. That'd be amazing.
Keep up the good work. Seriously, we know that you guys are on the front lines. You're on the front lines of something that we're very passionate about as well. And God's truth is really important. It needs to go out. People need to know that there's a reality and that God intentionally made us the way he made us, and he has a purpose for each of us. So I love that. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you both for having me on.
Of course.
Have a great day.
All
You
right,
too.
Landon.
See you
God bless.
later.
Bye,
God
y'all.
bless you.